I'm Laura. I've been working in cybersecurity for just over 20 years now. Started out as a firewall engineer. Throughout that time, cybersecurity has changed somewhat, as has pen testing, since we're doing this. Worked with Technium quite a long time. Founded Criticalis with Matt Killick 5+ years ago. And hence we're doing this webinar together as we have a close working relationship. So I'm going to make the assumption that most people on this call are Technium customers or prospects in one way or another. So pen testing is pen testing. So as I sort of alluded to, pen testing has changed quite a lot over the years. Historically, I would say if you said pen testing, people would think of external attacks, you know, testing your external perimeter. These days, I think it's quite a lot more use cases than that. It's still the same premise that you're trying to simulate real-world attacks, identify those exploits before someone else can leverage them against you, and show what actually can be done from the various vulnerabilities and exposures that you have out there, as opposed to it just being theoretical. Got on this slide that it's not theory, but in some cases, I think it's worth noting that pen testing by nature is generally time boxed when it's manual pen testing, and that's because you look at a network, an environment, understand how many hosts are there or what you're trying to test, and you make an assessment on average of how long it takes to undertake that testing. So it's really what can you achieve in that period of time. So some of it is left to theory as to you've got that stuff out there, you should go look at it, but a lot of it is this is what we managed to achieve whilst we were in your environment. So today we're going to look at automated pen tests, manual pen tests, so infrastructure, external and internal, assumed breach, applications and cloud posture, because they're the ones that we predominantly focus on because we think they're the ones that provide the most value. So we've said realizing the value of pen tests. It may seem a bit obvious, but again, I think pen tests historically were external. Were external testing to try your perimeter. These days you have internal pen tests, but also a lot of it is sometimes driven by a compliance need, and I don't think necessarily they creep up on people and they don't necessarily put a great deal of thought into what are we actually trying to achieve, what's the bigger picture that we're trying to achieve here, because it's sort of one of those things that just someone comes, does a pen test, and that's it. So it may sound like, say, you know, obvious, but what is it you're actually trying to test? Is it a particular part of your network? Is it understanding as many skeletons that you can pull out the closet for that duration of time? Is it actually where can you get to in the network? Is it if we have a compromise, where can a user in a given department get to? Is it actually we want to know that our SOC services, our third parties are all going to respond as we would expect them to if there's something detected on the network. So there's lots of different things that you could be testing. It's not just the technical, let's get a list of vulnerabilities and how they can be chained together. Something that we also see fall down a fair bit on pen testing is plan it ahead of time. Make sure that you have the access provisions. Make sure that you thought about how is a tester that we put here in our environment going to get to everything. As I said, it is time boxed. Ideally, you want to provision access and credentials just before the pen test so that that can all be tested, and as of day one that pen tester is now doing something. But no matter how many years I've been doing this, it's quite often a good proportion of pen tests that access isn't there and the pen tester is twiddling their thumbs for the first day, maybe even longer, and They will try and make that time up. They, will try and juggle things with reporting, but obviously, as I say, it's time boxed. They're generally here for a period of time and then they go off into the next engagement. So try and make sure that you have everything done in advance, ready to go, and make sure you do something with the output. So again, that might sound blindingly obvious, but over time we have seen that people get results. Sometimes they literally file them and tick a box and then wait till next year. And funny enough, you have the same findings. Sometimes there's a bit of remediation that happens, but probably not to the degree that you maybe would expect. So be prepared that out of the back of this, what is it that we're going to do? How are we going to drive that remediation? And again, that might be technical fixes. It might be service fixes with your third parties or internal teams as to how we react to things. So yeah. Automated pen tests. So automated pen tests have been around for a few years now. I think they're still not as common as manual pen tests. I think it's really worth making the point here that they're not all created equal, and we still see some tools that are more vulnerability scanners being called automated pen tests. They're not the same thing. Vulnerability scanning is a part of pen testing, but you really want to look at, if you're going to have automated testing tools, you really want to understand what those tools are doing and what they are testing, and that you're getting an actual automated pen test and not a glorified vulnerability scanner. So that in mind, automated tools, they're built on pen testers' knowledge and experience and the techniques that they use. So they're very good at maintaining a base level of good cyber hygiene, because they go out and they do the things that we tend to see time and time again as the findings in manual pen tests. So it provides structure. You can have it on a regular basis, and you can make sure as things are added into the network that they are not introducing vulnerabilities that you've previously mediated. I would stress that it does not, in my mind, replace a manual pen test, because these give you a good baseline. They have their place. They're great for compliance. They're great for not waiting a year to find out that actually the thing that you thought you fixed, you haven't fixed, or that the thing that was fixed has now been introduced somewhere else in the network. But as I say, I don't think they replace manual pen testing, because they are more objective driven, as opposed to this is more of a process that is repeatable, that you can do time and time again. So with that in mind, I think the use cases for automated testing, if you haven't had any pen testing done before, I think it's a really good place to start, because it cleans up a lot of the noise, so that if you have a manual pen test, you're making that pen tester work a bit harder to earn their keep, because the generic things that we see time and time again have been tidied up. I think it's good that you can run it on a regular basis. It's based on IP addresses, so that you understand what your cost is going to be and it doesn't change. You could have it quarterly, you could have it monthly. Say it means that you're not having to wait a year for either maybe you figuring out that the things you thought were fixed aren't fixed, or making sure that new things haven't been introduced into the network. And it's good for compliance, because again, you can show that baseline is held to a standard. So this is just a screenshot of the tool that we use, and it's really just the dashboard that shows. It's real easy to interpret. It shows you straight away, without needing to really look into it, where you're at in terms of your vulnerabilities and what's being tested on the network. And then out of that, you can actually get a further report that shows you what's actually active in the environment, their criticality. you have the actions of seeing whether or not the output from the machine, so that you can validate that the findings are accurate, and it also, you can choose to see a description of what this issue is, what you need to do to remediate it. So yeah, it's, like I say, it's pretty handy in terms of that ongoing baseline. So manual testing. So I think manual testing is more objective driven, and it's more defined by the scope and what it is that you want to achieve. So infrastructure testing, as I said before, historically we would think external. A lot more these days we look internal. Normally, quite often we do both at the same time with the customer. So you're looking at the external, what can we achieve, and you're putting a box on the internal. This really is to identify as many weaknesses as you can in that time possible. So quite often you'd open up the network and you'd basically just say, right, how about it, Mr. Pentester, go scan what you can scan, see what you can exploit, and bring back as much as you can for the things that we need to go and remediate. And obviously the reports will, you know, explain that whether a network's been opened up and you've had free range, or whether you haven't. But I think to get the most value out of this, usually you want to try and find smelly skeletons in the closet as possible, so that you can go and fix them before you ever have a problem. And again, part of this is identifying those weaknesses, and a pen tester will pull the various different threads and chain them together, so that they understand, well, if I add this one over here and do this over there, then actually I get a much better result in terms of the compromise. So that's where that bit of maybe the automated testing doesn't achieve that, because they can't sort of, I don't know whether, you know, if anyone's on here has got kids, whether you've ever tried to tidy up your kids' toys, or, you know, make some sort of sense out of them. It's like you've got to know that actually part of it's in this room and part of it's in a box upstairs in another room and a part. And you've got to remember all those things and put those together to actually now, you know, achieve that objective. And that's what a pen tester, I think, is good at doing, getting all those different bits in their head and going, oh, well, I saw that over there, and putting that together. So and again, they're just basically seeing what they can, whether they can get to main admin, what can they achieve from being in the network and using those exploits. So, to assumed breach. This is where security as an industry these days, we don't say, we say it's not if but when. The likelihoods of a company having a breach these days, you know, is so much, you know, higher in my mind as, you know, 20 years ago, because there's so many more threats, there's so many surface areas, you know, and this is where we say about the layered approach to security. So the idea of the assumed breach is, let's assume that somebody's clicked on a link or something's happened, but someone is now in our network, and that might be Bob in accounts, it might be, you know, Gina in, you know, marketing, it might be whoever, right? So if we start out on that premise as a standard user, what can we achieve? And what we're looking for here is maybe, can we move across the network? Can we escalate our privileges, whether it's having moved across the network from where we are? And as I sort of said earlier, what about the other things? Do we have a SOC service? Do we have an MDR service? Are they triggered? Are we getting alerts to say there is activity in our network that looks like somebody's in our network? Because if you have those services and you don't, then that's a problem that you want to go and remediate. Are the tickets that are being raised, how are they being handled? Who's handling them? Is it the response we'd expect? Is it the timeline we'd expect? So that's the sort of thing that we're trying to achieve with assumed breach. And what we do with some of our customers is we do the first half. So we start off trying to go under the radar, see what we can do as, just having access to the network. And then that turns into just an infrastructure one after a period of time, so that you've got that nice hybrid of testing your services and then also at the same time getting as many issues as you can out on the table. And there's application testing. So application testing is a lot more for bespoke applications. If you've got developers, if you've had work done to, if you've got backend on your website that interacts, and what you're really trying to do here is simulate what can you achieve being a user that's interacting with this application. So of course there's the, okay, if you're not authenticated, what can you achieve? But also if you are authenticated, can you get into, if you're in a multi-tenancy environment, and we've seen this with one of our customers previously, okay, I'm now a user Bob, what can I see? Can I see other customer information? And they're the sorts of things that you need to test. So it's not just if you're not a user, it's, well, okay, what if I am a user? What can I achieve? What are the different types of users that I achieve? Are all those different user types impacted, or is it just some? And what are the different exploits that you can use as those various different users? So that's a lot more in depth specific to an application, but if you have bespoke applications, it's definitely worth having them tested. And then there's cloud posture testing. So obviously this is focused on the cloud, AWS, Azure, Google. Cloud is definitely, a growing attack surface that generally goes untested. So this is really looked at what are cloud specific threats that could create exposures. So it's having the access into your cloud environments and then understanding, is your identity access management doing what you expect it to do? Do you have exposed storage? So we've just had a pen test where the client was leaking data from their cloud instances, and if you came across that URL, you could see client information. So it's looking for those sorts of things that you think will be locked down, but actually when you look at the configuration, when you test that, when you understand it and then do some testing of it, is it as locked down as you think it is? Are you exposing secrets? Because that's, your classic one that we see, right? The secrets are out on the web and somebody's picked them up. So, and again, good use case for this is compliance when you are running a framework. So that's very specific to the cloud. I think it's definitely worth doing if you haven't already had your cloud assessed. Right, so a pen test case study. So this is going to be a few slides long, and really I'm explaining this one to you because it's not just, if you really want to get the value out of your pen test, it's not just the technical things that are the takeaway from this for me. I think it's the combination of what do you do, what are you trying to achieve, and that whole wrap around it, and that you're probably, it's not just one pen test, it's probably what you're doing over time to move your posture forward. So we had a use case, had a retailer. They've got around 75 stores around the world. It was for internal and external infrastructure pen test of their UK headquarters, and the reason being that they'd had a previous breach, and what they wanted to do was identify any weaknesses and how they could improve their posture if they ever had another attack. So round one. So we had the pen test, and the pen tester got domain admin, which for the technical people on the call know that that's the keys to the kingdom. They compromised the client database, so they're able to get customer information, and they compromised the customer CCTV, which was not ideal either. So there were no indicators of compromise that were raised during this. There was a SOC service in place at the time. That hadn't been there very long, but there was a SOC service. And so as the output of that, and obviously a pen test, you tend to, the pen tester comes, does the test, gives you the report, off they go. We engage with the customer to help them with their remediation, and what they do is more of a general security program. So out of that, we worked with that SOC service to review what happened there, and we put a service improvement plan in place for them. We did some build standards for the third party that looked after their servers, predominantly all their infrastructure, and we gave them what we recommended they should do with their build standards. So come back for round two. Again, pen tester managed to take domain admin, and they compromised the client database. Didn't get to the CCTV this time, so it was, marginally better. Again, there were no indicators of compromise that were raised, which was very disturbing, because if you have a compromise, you want to know that your SOC service is going to alert you. So out of the back end of that, the SOC service was replaced. We'd had further conversations, and it was just decided that they were not fit for purpose. The build standards that had previously been supplied to the third party, they got made into a group policy to be pushed out. And we deployed some automated pen test tools so that we had that ongoing baseline to understand, was the baseline where we expected to be when new things came into the infrastructure? Was it remaining at that baseline, or was it introducing new issues? And we deployed some canaries, which are, again, for anyone who has historically been in the industry, is honeypots. They're a bit like a tripwire, so they're designed for an attacker to look at them and then they set off an alert. So we're going to have a separate webinar on canaries and the use of canaries, but yeah, we put some canaries in as well. So round three, they still got domain admin. Not ideal, but at the same time, we now had a new SOC service, and some of the pen testers' activities were identified. We had to wash up with the SOC service afterwards and the pen tester, so we all got on a call to understand what activities happened when they raised flags, how those tickets went to third parties, and how they were all interacted with. And as a result of that, we made some recommendations as to what they could do on their side to improve their SOC service, what they might test for in the future. We also looked at what had happened with the canaries alerts, whether that was what we expected. We gave them a run book as to what we thought they should do between the SOC service, the third party, ourselves and the client. And again, that group policy, we'd noticed that hadn't been implemented across everything as it should do, based on the baseline testing. So again, that went into a bit of a service improvement plan, and that was rolled out. So round four, they didn't manage to get domain admin this time. The pen testers' activities were flagged really early on, which was really good, and several of the activities were flagged and highlighted. So overall, much better result and a much happier customer in terms of where they felt they were at and how prepared they were should they have another attack. The pen tester did find some new issues. They found that some of the mailboxes, users could see technically other users' mailboxes if certain things occurred. And that happens because in that period of time now, they could focus on the next level of things that they should be going and doing, and pull on threads that they previously looked at before but hadn't had time to look at because of the other findings that they'd had and going down that route. This was very recently, so we're still currently reviewing what we want to do out the output of this, whether there's anything with the third parties that we could be doing to improve or not. Obviously, we've got the technical aspect to the things that we are doing and what we recommend to the customer for that. But in terms of services and how that works between all the parties, that's still being reviewed. So the outcomes really for that customer was the key attack paths were closed. They're in a much better state overall. The testing has held each of the third parties accountable for their services. It's highlighted where some just weren't fit for purpose, where there's improvements that can be made. It's made better response time between each of the parties and understanding of how we all interact with one another. And it's improved the alerting and response time, and basically the reduction of the cyber insurance overall. So, takeaways. Be clear on your scope. Make sure you know what you want to test, what you're trying to achieve. Be prepared in advance. Make sure that you've got, the credentials, the access in place. If you're planning on testing something that's a business critical system, that the whole business understands that you're going to test that, and that you don't get to the start of testing and then get told you're not allowed to test it. We've literally had that before. And make sure that you action the results. Not sure we have time for questions because I know we're practically at time, I think. But if you're thinking of pen test, obviously get in touch. We can discuss what makes sense for you in your environment. If you have a Technium account manager, get in touch with them or speak to the security person on your next review or email us. And if there are people who have the time to run over and you want to ask a question, feel free to do that now. No questions. I'm just going to see whether I can see any in the chat or not. Look. Yes, you can have a recording to the webinar. Thank you. I think that's it. So thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for coming.